Hi, everyone. At least we have one person staying on stage, but we also have some staying here to listen to gambling regulations and compliance-led growth. And I mean, this is something we all know is important, but I wanted to let my panel introduce themselves and also explain soon why they have an appetite for this. And then we'll dive into some issues and problems that everyone faces. And then we'll end with how all these people know how to solve it and do it better. Do you want to start with introducing yourself and what's good with compliance-led growth?
Okay, I will start. Hello, everyone. I'm Tatiana, and I'm from Amigo Gaming. It is a slot provider. I would say it's a young company, and I joined from the beginning, from startup. So I was on all this way where we becoming like a very valued competitor. So now we are facing like the issues with compliance. We want to be like even more competitive provider. And yes, so from our side, compliance is not obstacle. From our side, compliance is mainly like opportunity to grow, opportunity to be better, to do higher, and better than yesterday and better than others. So from our side, regulation is, it is not an obstacle, but this is mainly like commitment. I would say commitment to our partners, to our players, and to us in the future, which company we will be in the next year, in the 5 year. So this is like our reputation and value. So from other side, I would say that this is opportunity because it bring like healthy ecosystem when players are protected, where big company can invest because it is regulated. And as well, it is a very nice opportunity for us, like provider, to be like in the first stage with the big companies. So from our perspective as well, it's not easy because it's not regulation is not something that you can do overnight. It is a very big growth. It requires like change and upgrade of everything that you have inside, that you have like in your team. So this is a very big way. And from the first side, I'm talking here about certification. What is certification? This is like legislation of our games, that our games can be regulated and we can present our product in different markets. The first is ISO standards. That's something that need a very deep preparation and need to make this update on our internal processes in our teams, and we need to show how we can manage the very critical tasks. And the third, it is certification. It's something that show how big the company are behind the product. Something the company who can be stable finance, someone who can work on regulated market. So if you ask me if it's easy, no, but it is a way to be like a valued player for a very long term. And I think that future is with not fastest companies, but with the most trusted one.
Thank you. And yes,
Thank you.
trusted partners get more partners. Seda.
I believe the audience here already know me since I was also the previous panel, so I can literally skip introducing myself. But short, for those who are new here, I'm Seda, regulatory compliance consultant and professional for the past 13 years in different industries, and also the founder of RegTech Flow, which is basically automating all sorts of workflows, what you have also mentioned, starting from certification, licenses, corporate, and the whole process. When it comes to compliance, one of the reasons why I love compliance, but especially regulatory compliance more, because it's never the same. And it's interesting and it's very, for me, political as well in some jurisdictions, some places. So, and it's never boring. It's chaotic, yes. I don't understand why still a lot of companies are scared away when they hear the word compliance, because everyone thinks like, oh, compliance, oh, no, let's avoid that. So, but in reality, there are so many advantages that you can use with compliance, and that the whole perception of compliance being the bad police in the room, I don't believe it's the truth. It just like corporates does not know how to use the right compliance in that room. So that's basically very short what I think about
Very
compliance.
good and interesting. Jana?
My name is Jana from Barbara Bank. We're also a game provider. I'm colleagues with Tatiana, and actually, what you was talking about really resonates with me. I mean, with us as a company, because we've already received totally 16, 17 licenses and certifications. And yes, this is also, our stable and big goal to be compliant, because us and our CEO, we do believe that the future is after, regulated markets. Can we say this? Yeah, that there are different markets obviously in this industry. And yeah, it definitely didn't happen overnight. And the amount of energy and resources that are invested is amazing. And also, Seda, I agree with you, no one should be scared of it. And also, from my personal perspective, being a mom, I think is really important for our industry to be heavily regulated. Yes, it's political. In Cancun, we were talking about actually in AffPapa how, the government, for instance, in Brazil, they benefit a lot with all these things, like they are catching a big piece of the pie and the income. However, again, as a mother, I really stand on that, yeah, this industry should be really heavily regulated. And I think that's why we're here, to discuss this, right?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to let Ruben introduce himself, but not all the way back to 20 years of history in this, because then we'll be here for too long, but maybe the highlights to why you think it's good to grow in compliance.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Ruben Portanier. I am a partner at GTG. We are a law firm and an advisory firm that helps gaming operators and affiliates in their business and applying for licenses. My history goes back a lot. So, unfortunately, I'm getting old. So 20 years ago, I was the regulator in Malta, and I also helped in drafting regulation, not only in Malta, but even in other countries, and also assisted the European Commission on coming up with technical standards for an eventual European Union law that never happened. From a compliance perspective, I obviously assist a number of clients, and I've been assisting a number of clients for the past now 14 years. And one thing that is important to sort of understand is that, first of all, compliance is not regulation. So regulation is there, but on compliance, you can actually fit under regulated framework, but you could also be fitting under another framework which is not regulation. Like, for instance, we mentioned ISO earlier on. For instance, that is not a regulation, but it's something which you decide as a company yourself that you want to go up to that type of standard. So compliance can be both imposed on you, or actually one that you actually seek in order to grow and have, try and project a certain reputation around your brand. One final thing, so that I don't take too much time from my colleagues here, is that gaming as a sector is viewed by those who are not involved in the gaming sector as a sin sector. So the reputation around the gaming sector is not very good. And regulation and compliance is one of those tools that can actually try and steer the public perception maybe in a different perspective.
No, that's a very good perspective as well, that we're also working with the outside. And we have the last one here, and now it's time to listen, not say that I didn't hear this before, because I know you come with some experience on what will happen to at least those that are regulated in the EU as well now. But please introduce yourself and what's the positive thing with the regulation?
You may I borrow the thanks. No. Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening and being with us today. My name is Irene Hernandez. I'm the CEO of Garaca, which is a cybersecurity company specialized in digital identity technologies. And the relationship with the iGaming is because, particularly in Europe, there is a new regulation upcoming for digital identities, whereby iGaming operators will have to accept ID wallets for authentication, which is a great example on how a compliance rule driven by regulation can actually drive growth in the business. I will set that for a moment aside. I would like to comment that for me, regulation is scary for three main preconceptions, which are based on good reasons. One is because it's time consuming. Like complying feels like it's gonna take me at least 1 year to get there. Second is about fragmentation, because even though regulations seem very much alike, in reality, or even SOC and ISO for security, like you have several frameworks that look similar, but when you go to the details in each of the geos you try to operate in, they have so many slight subtle differences that you need to attend to. So that's people struggle with the complexity around this fragmentation. And finally, is the resources that you need to put into it and that you can, or you have to take away from business-related activities. And there are, for me, two great opportunities to overcome all of these initial thoughts. One is automation, and we have several people here in the room that can talk more about that. But we have now tools that can help operators automate compliance. I've done it from my own organization for ISO. And automation, if you combine that with AI, like for instance, Perplexity is really good specifically for summarizing regulatory frameworks and understanding these nuances I was talking about. So if you can combine automation with speeding up this analysis process, that can get you up to speed in no time, while at the same time, operators are getting, on organizations in general with compliance are getting a really structured and organized setup, internal setup. So organizations really get disciplined in how they organize their data internally, and that helps in the long run keep a more scalable business. To that end, I think that in a nutshell, compliance, and coming to his comment, brings this trust on your operations and therefore access to tier 1 traffic that eventually will spend more on your platforms. Specifically with identity, and that will be my last intervention, identity, ID wallets, or think of it as Apple or Google wallets, but for identity. In addition to storing your credit cards, you are storing your national IDs, your passports, your identity information. Now, onboarding new players, it's a nightmare in regulated markets because you are putting a gate, whereas unregulated operators don't. So in a sense, you are at a disadvantage, and onboarding new players' conversion rates are a struggle. With ID wallets, which is a mandate by the European Commission specifically, first to be issued by governments, but then to be accepted by regulated industries, including the iGaming industry, what it turns out is that they're opening the door to pre-verified users that you can onboard the same way as they pay in a contactless process. Like tap your phone, you've paid any transaction, tap your phone, you've verified yourself, and you're ready to go and play. So this is just one example of how this really could lead to business growth. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we heard as well that this is coming, so no one can say that they didn't hear about it. You wanted to say something to what Jana said before, please.
Yeah, because we are working in some type of company, so Jana was commenting about how hard it's really to do internal changes, preparation, but it is not just this. As well, once you receive a certification license that are required to work in specific market, it still need time because we have technical integration. And if, for example, if you receive some market complete documentation, it doesn't mean that you will be there tomorrow. So you need to work hard as well on technical side, on preparation from this side. So yeah, so from our experience, we are We have in our portfolio around 16 markets, but we work in maybe 5 of them because we're still waiting, we're still completing. It's very new for us, and it is very different requirements from different countries. So we think that we are ready, we're presenting, and it's still missing some data, some specific game rule or some specific symbol. So this is a very, very big job of the teams, and the result is really not coming tomorrow. So that's why it's as well more valued.
Thank you. And now I figured we will talk a little bit about what is difficult with regulation. We all know we want to grow in this way, but what is difficult? So why not be a little bit blunt here and say, very often our industry say that regulators don't understand us. And I know you explained the difference in compliance, but please, anyone?
I would disagree of saying regulators do not understand us. Sorry for that. I truly think that they do understand, but sometimes in different jurisdictions they become overprotective for many reasons. It's player protection, as I was saying, it's also political, it's a market protection. And because of those protections, sometimes the regulations are much more tight, and that's make quite frustration in our industry. But at the same time, the thing is, for my opinion, and I think that would be the future, that as much as I do understand from regulators' perspective, but I also believe that for a long run, businesses are the ones who are fuel to the market. So there should be some balance between regulators, regulation, and also operators or providers. The simple reason because when regulation is too tight, that's what pushes the operators to go to gray market, and that's where they will, like, the operators or providers that you want to get out of on your way literally comes with an excuse and blaming regulator for not being business friendly. So there is a that balance that is, I truly think in the future regulators should sit on the table and become much more business friendly, but at the same time, I do also understand why regulations, especially in Europe, it's very, very heavily regulated because of, again, many reasons.
Ruben.
Yeah, speaking as an ex-regulator and having worked with more than 20 regulators across these years. So one important thing that needs to be understood is that there is a difference between the regulator and the legislator. Now, it is the legislator that does the regulations. The regulator just, the role of the regulator is just to enforce those regulations. Now, in some cultures, you have the regulator who are also the policy advisors of government. But ultimately, it is the legislator that actually comes up with the regulations. Now, we've been seeing a wave across Europe of tightening and sometimes going with things which are completely logical, even from a regulatory point of view. And it's not because the regulators don't understand the industry, it's because the legislators react to populist moves or pressures, which sometimes are also caused by the industry itself. Let me just give an example of what happened in Sweden some years back. You're from Sweden, you can understand. So Sweden came up with the regulation to start regulating at a Swedish level online gaming. There was a bit of an illogical imposition that there could only be one welcome bonus. So bonuses were not allowed under the new regulation, which then meant that all the operators, in order to make themselves known and in order to attract as many players as they could, they overdid it with advertising, big time, in mass media. There was the people really reacted badly to all of that bombardment of constant advertising, and the politicians had to react because otherwise they would lose the votes. So they just say, okay, we're just going to put in a ban on advertising. Now, that was caused by the industry not realizing that you have to be a bit attentive of how you go about things. But in that case, the regulator had nothing to do with with that imposition. The consequence is that the black market, even from a Swedish market point of view, is very high, because there's no way how a player can realize whether operator X or operator Y is licensed or not. So this is something which I think is a matter that we are dealing with in terms of the sector, and that is also touching with the perception, the positive perception that I was trying to instigate in my previous intervention, that the sector needs to actually really push in order to change the dynamics that it has with those who are the general public, and not only those who play on their sites.
Thank you. I'm going to give it to you as well, but I have to say as well that from trying to build a platform into different regulations, you almost feel like, is this kind of a game from the regulator side to come up with as strange things as possible? But now, if I got it correctly from you, at least now we're starting to have a bit more unified rules, because that's also a technology problem, that we have been forced to do different things, whereas US, for example, they have a regulatory framework and we can actually follow it. So are you seeing as well that it's becoming more unified how we have to follow regulation between countries?
First of all, just a note, I do truly believe that players know if they are playing licensed or not licensed. I truly think that they just follow the pattern of who gives higher bonus. So, and then it's who is easy to skip the verification process. That's what at least I've been noticing in the previous companies I used to work, that even though we had licensed operators, licensed website, I would say, the more players were keen to go non-licensed one because of many reasons, even though they knew clearly what's licensed, what's not. When it comes to regulation, one of the things which was crazy that during the COVID happened, that every European market understood how much money is going on the circle of gaming, and then everyone like a mushroom decided to make their own regulation, and there was nothing centralized. And then that was the time that I've been involved in B2B from Andorra, the drafting, where everyone wanted to be Malta, but not Malta. So everyone wanted to be Malta, but at the same time, very regulated, very player-oriented. And one of the things that I think would have been good, but at the same time, I don't think it will happen anytime soon, but I hope it will, is that like MiCA, when we have MiCA, which applies for whole Europe, I truly believe we should have one legislation that covers Europe, and obviously because of the languages, because of some issues, so there will be like simple or just additional requirements based on the language and based on the jurisdiction. But I truly think that the key would be here, instead of going through the hell of applying Dutch license, and then the same hell for German, the same hell for Italy. And when you look to all the requirements, you will see like 70% of them are requesting the same information. So if we could have one license, which will be more for Europe, covering all the states, or certification doesn't really matter. License is also, when we are talking about the framework for certification. Then in each jurisdiction, you would only comply or apply for those small changes like language or deposits or limitation or whatsoever. So that's what I think would have been good to have and would cut a lot of headache for all of them, all of us.
And when it comes to the game provider side, is that one of the main decisions on when you try to open up a new market? How long is this going to take, and how friendly is the regulator?
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, I would like to also highlight the bottleneck of this process is going to be the laboratories. So the newest case, for instance, the Brazil got regulated. And I think laboratories were not as efficient as well and fast to understand how to do everything. Honestly, as well, we had this bad experience with MGA that we were expecting, to get this for, I don't know, I think for 3 years or so. So, yeah. And, at the end of the day, I'm sorry to say, but, this game, like being Malta, not Malta, being friendly to the business, and now it seems like that MGA is really losing their credibility, but, we were fighting so hard for that. And I don't know, I hope there will be changes in Malta, right? In future, maybe to bring it back to where they were. But yeah, I would say today this laboratories, Tatiana also mentioned about the technical part, but yeah, our team is quite cool. So yeah, we struggle, but we struggle a bit. And like, I think in-house, we do things really fast and really efficient to comply to, I don't know, from Europe, Latin America, and all the parts of the world. But yeah, for us, the greatest bottleneck is the laboratory that are actually, you know, helping us through this process.
Okay, and now we talked a lot about the problems, but the things that are good and have become better with compliance. Does anyone have an example of this was a mistake, or not a mistake, but this was something that took a lot of time a few years ago, and now it's getting better? Or worse? You can take worse as well if you want.
I would literally say it's not getting better, it's getting
Okay.
more and more. Because before we had one or two jurisdictions, like before MGA was so strong, it was covering so many jurisdictions. And it was very, very good license. And then we had like MGA good one and then Curacao, and it was pretty simple, you know, you would go Curacao, take a master license whatsoever, and then you would come for regulated markets, MGA. Now we have almost every European plus Brazil plus Latin. I'm not even talking about US now. Okay, US is completely different story. And then on the top of that, every day we are hearing some offshore comes up with the new regulation, and then we have on the top of every regulated, Navy is waking up, Tuvalu is waking up, like the places that I don't even know until I heard that there are jurisdiction coming up, and then I'm Googling to see what are those places. And so I don't think it became any simpler. It gave opened a lot of doors for gray market, a lot, for the same reason why it's very hard to keep up with regulated markets. So yeah, I think the headaches became more and more bigger, and it involved more and more people. But I don't think it became any way easier than it was before, in my personal opinion.
Oh, okay. That's probably the correct conclusion, but yes, we're still going in that growth direction. And what weapons do we have? What can at least do this situation better if you're a provider and operator? I mean, how can you make it at least a little bit easier for yourself? If you want.
I mean, and I think that question is not so close to my expertise. I can definitely provide a very specific example and coming back or expanding on the identity topic on how regulation can make things easier for the industry. I totally agree with Seda that regulation in general across Europe is now more complicated than before, and therefore compliance takes more resources. It's not simpler. It's a little bit worse. With identity particularly, and that's a great example on the benefits of having one, in the case of Europe, one European-wide regulation affecting every single operators in the region, is the EUD wallets. So these ID wallets that every single government will have to provide by November this year, what they're presenting essentially is pre-verified users, pre-verified players. It's just opening the door to onboarding any player in literally one click. Whereas today, what regulated operators are doing in all of these markets is a very complicated onboarding process because they need to comply with the regulation. They need to do a KYC, so liveness detection, upload your document, verify your address. Today, the user experience is terrible. With ID wallets, it will be a one-click experience. So that's a very specific example of how European-wide regulations can improve a lot the operations of an operator. And I think this is very important, and that's something that I never see in regulatory conversations or even in legislative processes, which is the word UX. Because legislation is always, and regulation is always drafted from the standpoint of player protection, or the businesses argue on growth, but never is the word user experience on the table. And that's a factor we always need to contemplate because users are lazy. They will just go for the simplest, easiest way to play. And if you don't factor that user behavior and user experience, and you optimize the regulation so that, sure, it protects players and protects businesses, but at the same time makes it so easy for the user to really adopt this regulation, it will not work.
Thank you. So we want to be licensed and regulated for stability, but clearly it's not becoming so stable because people, regulators keep changing. We have to apply new things. But are any good examples of any stable regulatory markets that you can think of?
Well,
Sorry, guys. We have 5 minutes left, just so you know. Sorry, short
I
time.
will just go very, very quickly on.
And then we'll have questions. So think of a question.
There are some elements which are horizontal, which are not necessarily gambling law related. So, for instance, earlier on we were talking about AI. So there's the AI Act, the European Union AI Act, that applies to any business, including gaming operators. And when it comes to B2Cs, the use of AI is a bit restricted because there's regulation around AI as to how you can utilize that AI even from a user experience point of view. So you cannot have a lot of, for example, personalization that was being spoken about before. There are a lot of limits of how much you can personalize experience under the AI Act because gaming would be considered to be a high-risk activity, etc., etc. Apart from that, there is also the new AML regulation from an EU perspective. And just last week, we saw for the first time the first form of uniform gambling hint of regulation across the EU, where for the first time, there's a definition of what an online gaming service is. And it is under the new AMLA, which is the new Anti-Money Laundering Act of the European Union, and it's the first time there is a definition of what online gaming is, which applies to all countries because it is a regulation, it's not a directive. So there are some hints of, horizontalization. Unfortunately, from a then sort of deeper level, the trends are all indicate that it's still going to be on a country-by-country basis.
So we have more headaches coming up.
Fantastic. Does anyone have any questions here?
Regulation is a boring panel, right?
You see how many audience we have? Of course.
I have another question, and that's not boring, but I was always jealous of the providers when I was an operator because I think all the responsibility falls on the operator and providers do nothing. So we can end with that one.
You're absolutely right, Jenny. It's true, and also in terms of money and stuff, the operators are definitely in a different position from us. But we're trying our best.
And then we have an affiliate panel here as well, and affiliates, they're even worse. They're often a little bit easier off as well, I think, in some aspects.
I think also it depends of regulation. Like if you go Brazil, then I wouldn't say. So, but if you because also right now Brazil literally legalized, the affiliates as well. So you need to be have license to be able to provide such service. So it's again truly depends of the jurisdictions we are talking about. That's one thing I love about regulation in general, that whatever you say, it's not absolutely 100% truth. And whatever can apply here might not apply somewhere else. And that's the beauty, I believe, of the regulation itself.
Yeah, but also with Brazil, I feel like that the government, they just cannot make up their minds, how take advantage of the industry. So, yeah.
I think that's at the beginning of every jurisdiction when they just come up. They just put the heaviest one, and as it goes, it will make
it's
more
now
and more
heavier and
more
heavier.
more.
For instance, the taxes are more, and they every half year or something. Though they they're copying a little bit the Portuguese one, because they have a relation and history. But come on, guys.
I've seen that pattern in Germany when maximum bet was €1, and then you couldn't justify VIP players why their maximum bet should be €1. But then they changed it. So I think now what Brazil is doing they give a lot of advantage license operators, because legally licensed operators, one of the advantage about licensed and unlicensed, that, for example, in Brazil, if you are licensed, you can literally advertise, where illegal activities or illegal license, they cannot. So they do have advantages, but I truly think as we move forward, the regulations will be changed again and again. But that's, again, something that I don't think will happen anytime soon, but eventually it will happen, because the whole idea of regulation is to bring businesses and to fuel all the money inside. So which means that at some point there should be some balance.
Yeah, and I mean, so we know now that everything is going to stay a little bit unstable. We're going to try and communicate and help each other, but that's also a thing. So we know some things that are coming, but that often happens within a company as well. So one side is very compliant, ready for business, and then you turn to like the KYC side or the games. You don't have any games all of a sudden. So it's also a way of cooperating both for regulators and compliance and within the companies as well, I think.
I think in 2 years' time, when we all of us sit and discuss this topic, it will be completely different way
In
of talking.
6 months' time, say the way. This is how fast they are.
Exactly. So in that case, our headache would be how to comply EU Act, how to make those EU credit usages or what tokens or whatsoever going to come up. And it will be completely different topics we will be discussing. And that's, I truly believe, is the beauty. So, and automation, AI, and everything will make huge optimization and huge help to organize, to centralize data, the most important, then organize that data, then use it. So it will be great help.
Thank you, and thank you so much for discussing this topic with me. I think we're